Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast, where I have conversations with successful entrepreneurs, financial experts, and leaders in the small business community. Past guests include Heather Lowry, a former accountant turned therapist who revealed to me fascinating connections she sees with entrepreneurs and their money mindset, and Lindsay Peterson, a branding expert who shares her not-so-secret secrets, because she wrote them down in a book, on how you build a brand that increases the value of your company. So if any of those sound interesting, please go back and check out past episodes. Today's episode is brought to you by Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is a fractional CFO agency devoted to supporting B2B service companies. If you're looking to uplevel your financial strategy and leadership in your business, visit claracfo.com to learn more. Okay, my friends, buckle up for a ride with a human who brings a Swifty level of enthusiasm to running great businesses. Today's guest is Zac Cramer. This neurodivergent LGBTQIA+ business coach claims to have enough imposter syndrome to fill the Grand Canyon, yet also recently helped the CEO of a $200 million company take his first ever cell phone-free vacation. So that sounds pretty good. So get ready for some fast-talking, joke-cracking wisdom from a guy who genuinely cares about helping you thrive. Zac, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for reading that lovely introduction exactly the way that I wrote it in an email to you last week. I appreciate it.
I love it because it had a lot more character than I typically can write myself. And so I'm like, perfect. This is great. I love it.
Beautiful. We're off to a good start.
Yes. Okay. Well, Zac, I have brought you on to the show for lots of reasons. Well, first, I like you as a human, but I would love to hear a little bit about how, what you do now and how you got there. And we're going to start unpacking this thing about EOS, but I kind of want to hear first about your history and how you got to this place.
So I like to call myself a recovering entrepreneur. Before I became a coach, I started and built and sometimes failed out of and sometimes sold a number of different businesses. And over time, I realized that having a system to run my businesses was more fun than making it up as I went along. That's not true. It was more fun to make it up, but running them on a system was more successful.
Yes.
And so after I exited from my last business, I was sort of sitting around saying, do I want to do another business or I want to do something else? And I decided, I think I want to coach. I think it's time to make that career shift and go in a different direction. And so I started coaching. I've been doing that for 4 or 5 years now. I freaking love it. And that's where you find me.
I love it. So, funny that you kind of differentiated successful versus fun. What does success look like to you?
I think when it comes to success, it looks like getting what we want versus fun, which is doing it the way that we want to do it.
Yeah.
I find that a lot of entrepreneurs, they're running their companies just doing what they want. They go in the morning and they do the thing that they want to do, but then they come to me at the end of the day and they say, but I'm not getting what I want. And success looks like actually getting what you want.
I like that. And that could be anything, I think. Is it time? Is it money? Is it freedom? Whatever that looks like, you can decide what that is for yourself. Okay, so what is EOS?
EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a simple set of tools that help businesses get 3 things we call vision, traction, and healthy. Vision from the standpoint of getting everyone in the organization aligned around a common vision for the future of the organization. Traction, which is all about getting everyone in the company doing the right things, taking the right steps, following the right actions to achieve that vision. And then healthy, which is making sure that we're enjoying the process, that we are going to work every day with a smile on our face. We want to high five all of the coworkers that we see because we're having a great time. We really enjoy getting the work done. You put all 3 of those things together, and I guarantee you that most of the time you're going to end up getting what you want from your business.
I think that's what everybody wants, right? Nobody starts their business thinking like, wow, I just want to have something that's going to be like, drag me down all the time and make me feel depressed and give me no money coming out of it. I think that we're all looking for what that looks like. Why have you seen EOS to be something that you want to actually help people with? What was it about it that kind of was an aha of in my next phase, I want to do this? Where did that come from?
That came from running my own businesses on EOS and seeing how much success it brought to them. And truthfully, again, it was success over fun. It was more fun back when I was the center of everything and got to do whatever I wanted and tell everybody to do anything that I wanted them to do. but it was exhausting. I was frequently making less money running a business than I would have just having a job running somebody else's business. And we were spinning our wheels, right? I would do something exciting over here, and meanwhile something would fall apart over there, and on and on and on. And so EOS got us on track to actually getting what we wanted.
Mm. So, like, how did you hear about it first? Where did that come from?
Okay, actually, this is dumb. This is not how most people hear about EOS, but it's how I heard about EOS. So I took my leadership team out to breakfast because I wanted to like set some goals and like figure some stuff out. And I brought like a single page piece of paper. I'm like, here's what I want to talk about. And we got to the end of like a 2-hour, 1-hour meeting. We all know those, right? It was scheduled for an hour. We got to the end of 2 hours, having not accomplished even half the things that I had written down, right? And I was so frustrated. I actually went back to my office and just started Googling, how do you have a meeting? I was like, how do you do this? There's got to be a better way to make a plan than what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is not working. And it took me to an EOS website where it was like, this is the level 10 meeting, and this is how you have it. And I had this aha moment of like, wait, someone else already figured out how to run a business, right? Like, I don't need to invent the process of setting goals and holding people accountable and figure it all out myself. Somebody else already did it. I can just copy paste their thing onto my business. Sweet.
Right. And then did you do it?
So I did what most people do when they find EOS, which is I started doing some of the easy fun parts of it.
Right.
And I was like, these are easy and fun. And it still wasn't working. And then I was like, well, why isn't it working? Talk to some other people who did EOS, talk to some implementers, people who do what I do now. And they were like, you seem to have skipped all the hard parts. You seem to just be doing the parts of it that are fun for you. And that's when we sort of got serious about it and started getting more of the results.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Like, we had kind of, I had looked up some of the tools because the website actually has a lot of free tools and things that you could go and look, and like good blog posts and things like that. And I had been like, yeah, we're kind of doing EOS. Sure. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe some of the more like bigger picture questions, answering some of those, but really not thinking about the whole thing. So really it is truly a system. So it's not just like, oh, read this book and here's some good pointers to take out. Like, there are standard things that you should be doing on a regular basis to run your business. So, like, can you just kind of like walk us through maybe the core parts of really what the system is, and kind of some more specifics, I guess, so we can, for people who are just like, I've heard of EOS, but I want to get some tangible, like really grasp what it is. What does that look like?
Absolutely. So EOS is a set of tools. That's all it is, no more, no less. They're tools you've already heard of. Your accountability chart. Who's responsible for what inside your organization? Metrics and scorecards. What are the numbers you need people to hit week in and week out so that you know that they're doing a good job with their jobs? Well, things like our core values. What are the unique set of behaviors we need to see people exhibiting inside this organization to make sure that they are behaving the way that we want them to with their coworkers and with our customers? So all of the tools individually are kind of duh, right? Oh, we should measure our people so that we know whether or not they're being productive. We should write down who's responsible and who's accountable for various things. We should set a plan for the next year and say, what are we going to do over the course of the year? The tool itself is kind of duh. It's the implementation that ends up being very difficult. So, for example, when people come to me and they say, oh, well, we're already running on EOS, we're doing a great job, we love EOS. The first question I'll say is, how many people have you fired because they did not match your core values? And inevitably, they kind of get very quiet. And they say, well, we've never done that before. And I'll say, well, great, we're not running on EOS yet. Because in EOS, we're saying these core values are non-negotiable behaviors from every single employee inside this organization. And if you don't adhere to these core values, you're going to have to go, and we're going to get somebody who does. Mm-hmm. So the hard part of EOS is not reading the website or reading a book and knowing that you should have an accountability chart. It's making that accountability chart and then realizing, and this is real, that you have to fire your own mother. That's the stuff.
Yeah. I do have clients who have their mother on payroll.
I've had relatives get fired before. It happens sometimes.
Yeah. I have a story about that too, because we started implementing at the beginning of this year and created the accountability chart and started looking at some of the key aspects to kind of go through each person and whether or not they aligned with our values and kind of the get it, want it, capacity to do it kind of concepts. And that was super helpful for us because there was, someone on our team that we had realized was really just kind of not getting it, and we were really struggling, but it was also like really hard for us to really put our finger on what is this, like why is this not working, and what is it, why does it feel like this is a struggle. And so being able to go through and really assess on core values, like, and it, no slight to the person, they just had a different way that they operated than what like we really wanted for the business. And I'm saying we, like me and my COO, as we went through this. And
Yeah.
like our leadership team is small. It's a leadership team of two, but it was really helpful, and it provided a lot of clarity for us. And then, we had to make a hard choice, and we made that choice. And I think we're better off as an organization for it. But I think being able to like have those tools as guides has been huge for us.
Absolutely. Using them as what we call a heuristic or a rule set. And one of the things they really help us do is they help us depersonalize some of the difficult choices. So I joke and say firing your mother, although it does happen sometimes. But what it's really about is we're moving from saying, you know, Bob is a good or a bad person to saying, does Bob fit this job? Right? Bob might be a deacon at their church. They volunteer at the soup kitchen every Saturday. They coach their kids' basketball team every Sunday. They wake up at 6 a.m. to walk their neighbor's dog, right? They might be the most delightful human being on earth. But our question is not, is Bob delightful? Our question is, does Bob fit? Does
Yeah.
Bob exhibit our core values? Is Bob the right fit for the job? And if not, we can say to Bob very kindly, we're happy to give you a referral. We're happy to refer you to all of our friends to help you find that new opportunity. It's not about you. It's, do you fit the thing we have? And if you don't, we need to find you an opportunity that does fit.
Mm. And that goes within like core values, but also just the role. Like, is this like, maybe you're a great person, but maybe role is just not the right role for you. Maybe you fit on all the core values, but you're just sitting in the wrong seat. So I'm sure a lot of people have heard this like right people, right seats, concept of like, are you in the right seat on the bus? Like I think a lot of the EOS terms have either leached in from other business platforms or business teachings, and or vice versa. Like there's been a lot of sort of uh, sharing of ideas with this whole thing. But can you explain the concept of like the right person, or right person, right seat?
Yeah, so RPRS, that's a term you're going to hear from a lot from any EOS implementer over and over and over again. We got to get the right people in the right seats, RPRS. Right people are defined by they adhere to our core values. And I want to talk for a hot second about what a core value is. A core value in EOS is not a belief. It's not an opinion. It's an action. It's an activity. So, Captain America, right, is truth, justice, and the American way. We would say those are terrible core values
Mhm.
because we have no idea what those mean in practice. When we have core values for our company, we want them to be things like, we are always on time, our bids are always accurate, and we tell jokes at every meeting, right? The core values are things where you can say, yes, I see it, you do it, that you're one of us, or I don't see you doing this. We say we're always on time and you're always 5 minutes late. We say that we hit every detail and your work is often sloppy, right? We say this and you do that. So it's not about policing people's thoughts. It's about saying, what do I see from you? And do I see you doing the thing I need you to do? That's what the right people are. And then the right seats are, do you deliver what I need from your position? Right? Yeah, you see it. I see it all the time with salespeople who might be great core values fits, but they don't actually deliver the sales.
Mhm.
And so I have the CEO kind of be, oh my God, we love this person. They're great. They're such a wonderful fit. Everyone loves them in the meetings. But darn it, we haven't hit our sales targets or our growth targets like ever. And you're kind of like, well, I love that you love them, but no, I don't have a solution for that, right? They come to me wanting an answer, how do I fix them? How do I make them a great salesperson? What's the right training? I'm like, they've been there for 10 years working on it and they're still not there. Probably they're not going to get there.
Mm, yeah, and it's hard for people to hear.
Yeah.
And do you think that that is, well, maybe why the third party, like having somebody outside of the organization looking in, is helpful? Like with having, a consultant like yourself or somebody to help you walk through that.
Yeah. Well, my clients always tell me I'm scary, and I don't think I'm scary. I think I'm a very nice person. right? I have cats.
I've
I
never
love
found you scary, but you're not my implementer, so maybe that's a different
right?
thing.
You haven't what you haven't had though is you haven't gotten the stare, which is where you say something where I'm like, "Oh, you're reacting from an emotional place right now, and you're not really doing what's right for your business, and I'm just gonna just kind of stand here quietly and look at you until you think through what you've said and whether or not you actually want to stand behind it." Right.
Mm.
And so, yeah, having an outsider perspective brings an enormous amount of value to those conversations we've had the exact same way, the exact same time. You and your COO have said the exact same thing over and over and over again. There's an internal logic, an internal story that you're telling yourselves, a belief that you guys have developed. I'll tell you a really common one, or one that I've been dealing with recently, which is, oh, the economy's bad, so we can't grow our business. Right. And so it's not really the fault of the sales department. It's just, the economy's bad. Right. And I get to come in and say, it's funny that you mentioned that because your competitor next door, right, who I talked to, work with, saw at an event recently, was telling me about the 30% growth that they've achieved this year. So we're going to stop telling that story. We're going to stop telling ourselves a story that we can't hire the right people because your competitors are hiring the right people, that we can't grow. Because I noticed in the news this morning that this company that does the same thing you're doing is also growing. And let's get down to some truth, which is usually we don't have the right people in the right seats.
Mm. Yeah. That's really interesting. I see that too as outside CFO coming in and working with the business, the story that the business owner tells themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And um ho- what do you do as a coach to kind of help them see outside of that? Because I find that as a struggle for me where I'm like, well, you're saying this and you really truly believe it, but I'm seeing other people who can do something different. So how do you break people out of that?
Welcome to coaching, right?
Yeah.
And I always start by saying, like, I love what you and other outsider perspectives bring because frequently, as an EOS implementer, we are bringing in outside perspectives. When people are saying, like, hey, we can't charge that much, right? Our customers won't pay it. Having an outside CFO who can be like, well, actually, we've done a study of the industry and we see other companies, lots of people are charging more than you're charging, right? And so sometimes that outside perspective is super critical, bringing in the information from other sources about things like that. And then a lot of it is digging into why are you telling the story? I have a client that I'm working with right now, refuses to raise their prices, hasn't raised their prices since 2017. They're in
Mm.
pretty bad financial shape. And it's like, hey, inflation from 2017 until now has been what, 50% or something? Like something, pretty heinous. But you're telling me you can't raise your prices. What's the real story? Right? What's really going on? Because we know it's not based on fact, right? The fact is inflation has been 50%, therefore your customers must pay more. So why do you think this is impossible? And we've got to approach that with empathy and kindness and understanding and hear what they have to say and try to help them work through it. And I mean, I'm
Yeah.
assuming that's what you're doing with people all the time, right? Like they
Yeah.
have a story and you've got to bring in the real financial data to be like,
Yeah. Like, in my mind, I'm going to like, do you have a sense of that your service is not worth more? Like, is there like a
mhm,
real value, struggle there? Or do you have some kind of money mindset issue on, um, you know, people shouldn't pay much more for this service
mhm,
because that's what you've deemed to be the ceiling in your own head?
right.
There can be a lot of things that go on there, but I think that that is like really good to have other people you know, giving perspective on your business when you feel like you're stuck in a rut like that. Because yeah, then that like group think happens, and that can happen in a leadership team meeting as
Yeah.
well, right? Where everybody's kind of saying that same story, and so everybody's going along with the same things, and you kind of need to shake that up a little bit. Um, I'm curious about like the well, tell me a little bit about how EOS works in like the monthly cadence of what does this look like? Is this the whole company is doing things? Is it leadership team? I'm leading you into the answer, of course, but
Yeah.
like, because I kind
It's
of know, but I want people to
yeah.
understand like what the cadence of there is meetings required. Like, what does this look like for people?
Yeah. So once EOS is up and running inside of an organization, in terms of cadence, there's a weekly meeting that's called the Level 10, which is the leadership team getting together every single week to talk about the problems inside the organization, come up with solutions, and deploy those solutions out to the business. There are quarterly meetings where we set our goals for the next quarter. There are annual meetings where we set our plan for the next year.
Mhm.
Those level 10 meetings do filter down to every team in the organization so that you're getting feedback and buy-in at every level. Because one of the things that always shocks people once EOS is fully deployed in their organization, especially deep organizations, I work with companies that have hundreds of employees, is the top decides something like, we're going to start using software X. And then it filters down and the bottom goes, we hate X. Please don't make us use it. Right.
Mm.
And then because they're in a level 10, that feedback actually gets back to the top, which it usually just doesn't. Right. In top down organizations, the leader comes in and says, this is what we're doing. And then the people at the bottom grumble about it, but there's no feedback mechanism. There's no way for the people at the bottom of the organization to say, like, we don't want to do this. This is not the right choice. We are actually in the field and we see a better way to do it. And EOS creates these cycles of sharing and reporting that allow things from the top to move their way down and from the bottom to move their way up. So everyone in the organization is better informed and people feel invested in the mission. They feel invested in the company because everyone in the company feels like they have a voice in what happens inside the organization. And that even if their opinion is not what's decided on, their opinion is heard, right? They were part of the decision-making process. And that could be utterly transformative for an organization. I've seen that over and over and over again, how much things change when the people who are at the bleeding edge feel like they're supported and like they have a voice instead of just being, thrown out into the woods covered in ketchup and told to catch some wolves.
Okay. So level 10s, do they happen I have a super small organization, so it's just me and my COO with my leadership team. So I don't know what this looks like when you get to multiple hundreds of people. So are you saying that there's kind of different layers of level 10s? So there might be, maybe departmental level 10s. And then on top of that, then that leader rolls up to the next level 10. And then those leaders roll up to the next level 10. So we're having multiple level 10s happening every week.
Yeah, just think of it as a pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
Because it basically works like that. It basically works like a pyramid scheme. Yeah.
Perfect. I'm currently listening to the Dream podcast, which is the best. Anybody who wants to learn about pyramid schemes.
Oh my God, it's so good.
So definitely go and check that one out. So are you telling me that EOS is a cult then? Are we on that track?
Pretty much EOS is a cult. The way people talk about EOS, you might think it is. When you meet EOS acolytes, the amount of excitement and reverie that they have for EOS does sometimes feel cult-like. But I'm here to tell you, I just pay a franchise fee, y'all. I have a franchise license to implement EOS in people's businesses. We do not have a great leader. We do. We have a great leader. We have a great leader of the organization. But I do not have anybody that I pay fealty to. No worshipful offerings are made. I just have a license to use these tools and say things like rocks without anybody suing me to implement EOS.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I actually was going to ask you about that because, it seemed to me like you kind of run your own business, but you have a website that points to the EOS Worldwide website. You have your own landing page. So that I was thinking about that. Are you paid by EOS or are you a franchisee? What does that look like? And then are you completely on your own? Do you have any employees that work for you? What does that look like?
Yeah. So every EOS implementer is their own business. We all have a franchise license to deploy EOS to companies out there in the universe. EOS gives us lots of support in terms of ongoing training and resources, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few leads that come from EOS. When somebody contacts EOS directly, they will feed those leads back out into the community. But that's fairly uncommon. That's not how most of us have grown our practices. Your average EOS implementer was already a successful entrepreneur, was already a successful coach, and we adopt EOS as our methodology. So I was already coaching businesses independently before I decided to start using EOS. And part of it was that feeling of oh my God, I'm sick of inventing the solution to every problem somebody's bringing me. Let me use these tools and let me use this framework within my existing coaching to be successful.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Because then you're I've already done this and I know it works because I did it in my business and it makes sense to me. I mean, it might not make sense to everybody, but from the businesses that I've seen that we have clients that are on EOS, when they really implement it and they do it well, it's working for them. So why would you go away from something that's, not working or that is working? So since you're running your own business, do you have power to set your prices or because it's a franchise model that's set at a, global level? What does that look like?
So every EOS implementer sets their own price. So we all set our own fees. By the way, you asked about employees. I have 2 assistants who help me keep running my practice.
Nice. Okay. Very cool. So you can set your own prices and, then you can decide how many businesses can you work with at one time? Do you bring them on and then you work with them in perpetuity or is it kind of one-time projects? What does that look like?
So an EOS implementation typically takes anywhere between 1 and 3 years, depending on how hard the client wants to do the hard things and how big the organization is. It might be a 1 year process with a company like yours, right? Which is, just a small, nimble organization. Like I said, I have clients who have hundreds of employees. That's going to be maybe 5+ years before every tool is implemented, everywhere inside the organization. But for the average entrepreneurial company, 10, 15, 20, 50 employees, somewhere between 1 and 3 years of work with a coach, at which point our responsibility is to let you go, right? So I am not a consultant. I use the word coach very intentionally, and we use the word coach very intentionally in EOS. We don't want to come in and start solving problems. We don't want to come in and start writing papers for you. We're not going to talk to your employees about what your core values are. Our job is to coach you and teach you the system so that you can get rid of us and continue running the system inside of your business.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point, right? Is that you're trying to build accountability in the organization so that it doesn't rely on any one person to do the thing, or like the business owner or whatever should be able to let the business run without, relying on somebody to be there and make sure we're all doing our jobs.
Exactly. The idea is that we are helping you install the system. And
Mm.
once you've installed it, you don't need me anymore. And I don't want to be there anymore, right? My hope, my prayer, my dream is for you to be successfully doing this accountability, running the system inside your business. And I've seen it over and over again. It's what works. But also, I just have a really short attention span. I don't want to work with the same company for 5 or 10 years. I
Yeah.
love coming into a new challenge, helping a company boot up, and then moving on to the next one.
Yeah. Well, probably if you are working with somebody for that long, then it probably makes you feel in some ways like, well, maybe this isn't working for them. Like if, or they're just very slow learners. I don't know. That can get frustrating when you're like, I'm saying
Yeah.
the same thing over and over and over again, and you're not taking action, and you need to take action to make it work. So, um, that makes sense. So, can you share some stories of kind of what you've seen companies be able to do once, like, pre EOS and then after?
Absolutely. Oh no, I've seen some extraordinary successes with my clients, and these are some of the funnest stories. So the one that you read off earlier, right, was about the CEO of a $200 million nationwide organization, and he was taking a vacation, and I was having a one-on-one conversation with him, and I was challenging him. I was like, well, how are you really going to make this a vacation? Vacation? Like, how are you actually going to take time off? Because he is always working on vacation. He always says he's taking a vacation, then he's still like attending the level 10, he's still sending emails, etc. And I was like, what about turning your phone off? Do you think you could? And he resisted that, quite a bit at first. I said, okay, what about turning it off for half a day? And if after half a day it's okay, keeping it off, right? And so that was like the baby step. I was like, okay, maybe we can get him into this. And he agreed to do that. And sure enough, I didn't hear from him for a week. And when he came back, he was like, I had my phone off for half a day. And I realized I trust my team. I trust my systems. I trust my process. I don't need to come back. And he left it off for the entire week. And he was in the Dominican Republic and he had a great time and sat on the beach and, drank apparently passion fruit mimosas. I didn't know you can make a mimosa out of passion fruit, but apparently you can. And he came back and it was like he was a different person, realizing that with the system and with the team that he had, he didn't need to be the center of the universe anymore. He could let his people run the company. And of course, as you can imagine, they did a great job while he was gone.
Yeah.
Nothing caught fire. Everything was fine.
Yeah. And I imagine, like, from the employee level or the leadership team level, like, that probably did good things for them too. To
1,000%. To
Yeah.
feel trusted,
Yeah.
right? Because like
Yeah.
these are adult human beings you've given jobs to. You're telling me you can't trust them to do their jobs for a full week? Because if that's true, you've got the wrong people. And we knew we had the right
Exactly.
people,
Yeah.
right? But it was just letting go of the vine, saying, okay, you're right. I'm ready. Let's let this thing happen.
Mm. I love that.
Then the other thing that we see is we see a lot of really fantastic exits. Because one of the things that people run into, sometimes people come to me because they've tried to sell their company and they have failed to acquire the kind of buyer they want or the kind of price they want. And oftentimes it's because the buyer realizes what they're buying is just the people.
Yeah.
That there's no system, there's no way the business is running, right? It's just Bob. Bob is the business. Bob is the center of the universe. And I've seen companies that have 50 employees where Bob is still the center of the universe, right? Where nothing has been documented, nothing has been written down. It's all relying on tribal knowledge. There aren't any job descriptions. People are just kind of running around doing their thing. And a buyer looks at that and they go, well, that's not what I want because you're leaving. So when you leave, the company leaves with you. And they'll come to me and say, hey, buyers are telling us we need a system. We need to be able to hand them a manual of this is how our company operates, right? And here's our accountability chart. And if I leave tomorrow, you hire somebody else and this is the job description that they need to fill, right? And you're going to be fine. And oftentimes we go 2 years through the EOS implementation and all of a sudden they're getting, offers that are 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times more than they were getting 2 years earlier because they can present their company as being run on a system instead of being run on a bunch of personalities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge. Um, I have assisted clients kind of going through, the buying process, and yeah, it definitely devalues the company in the buyer's eyes if it's reliant on one person and what they're bringing to the table, or even like a few critical employees, and nothing's documented, and you know without that one person, which usually the business owner actually wants to be done with the business at that point in time,
Mhm.
so they don't want to have to stay and work under somebody else's leadership. That usually doesn't work out too well. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. um what do you see from the I guess from, well, I don't know, you probably don't see financials, do you?
Oh, I
um
see it all the time. No,
okay.
that's a big part of it because the truth is, when I come in, a lot of people are lying to themselves about their numbers, and so
Mhm.
one of the first questions I ask is, "Give me a 12-month rolling P&L." And by the way, you'll be not surprised by this. Many of them can't. They'll be
Yeah.
like, "Our books were last reconciled in like 2022," and then I'm like, "Sweet, how do we make any decision when we don't know anything?"
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess like usually in level 10s, or at least in quarterly meetings, we should be seeing financial updates on the numbers. So they are kind of required to keep that up. So
Right. Well, and obviously, if we have built our accountability chart and we have somebody in that
mhm,
finance seat is responsible for making sure we have the numbers. And if we
yeah.
don't, we should be firing the person in that finance seat and bringing in somebody who can do that work.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you feel like in the accountability charts that you've gone through with people? Do you see any common gaps? Do you see like where people feel like, oh yeah, I've got sales and marketing taken care of, or I've got admin
Mhm.
taken care of, but what do you see there?
The biggest gap that we see is people who write the accountability chart for the person they're putting in the seat. And it's so important that we write the accountability chart for the job we need, not the
Yeah.
person that.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest mistake that we'll see. And the other thing is, if Bob writes Bob's job description, Bob is always going to be good at being Bob, right? What we got to say is this is what we need out of a finance leader. And if you can't do it, we need to get someone who's going to be a good finance leader. And the reason people do that is they're afraid of having those hard conversations. And so they say, great, we did EOS. We let every person write their own job description. And now they're doing the job description they've written. Look, that's EOS. I'm like, nope, y'all just kind of just did that thing. You just avoided the accountability. Sorry, start over.
Mhm. Mhm. When we went through the process of writing our accountability chart, I mean, we're small again, so like
Yeah.
that's, you do have people who are kind of like sitting maybe in two roles currently.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it really helped us really clarify what our next hire was, and also just how to clearly delineate, I can't possibly be doing this role and that role. Like
Mhm.
it's not healthy for the organization, for me as the business owner to be in charge of operations, finance, and admin. Like it
Right.
just didn't work very well. So um that was really helpful for us to be able to go through that. I'm curious if you see a size of an organization that is ready for EOS, where maybe like it might be too small to start. I mean, is that a thing, or what do you see when people are coming to you asking?
Yeah. So where EOS is too small is when there is not yet a business, right? So when it's just like I have an idea of a thing I want to try, that's
Yeah.
kind of a hobby. As soon as you have one customer who's paying you at least $1, you're big enough to start using some of the EOS tools. Now you're not going to hire me, right? You don't need a
Yeah.
full-time implementer to come in and do the thing. But starting to implement some of those tools for yourself, everyone needs a scorecard. If you're a solopreneur, if it's just you walking around selling hot dogs out of a backpack, you need to know how many hot dogs you've sold and how many you're supposed to sell and how much profitability you're making on them. It doesn't matter what size your business is. We've got to know what our numbers are. And then to speak to your point, which is about people in too many seats, because that is another common accountability chart challenge.
Mhm.
I do find that people are quite resistant to, but are getting better at accepting fractional help, right? Accepting, oh, no one needs a full-time CFO until they've got, I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know, maybe $20 million, right? Before like
Yeah.
you've got to have someone full-time doing that job.
Yeah, I mean, it could be even more, like 50 million even. It kind of depends on,
Like the
how
complexity.
complex the business is and how much they
Yeah.
want to grow, what kind of financing needs they have, that kind of thing.
Totally, but you still need the expertise, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're a $5 million company or even a $1 million company, the insight that a CFO can bring is critical. And we are finding people are now are getting better at understanding, like, oh, maybe that seat needs to be filled with someone who's going to be here 5 hours a week. Instead of me filling in for, visionary, integrator, operations, and finance, let me say, let's bring someone in to do finance who's just going to do finance. Because I do an exercise sometimes where when people are in too many seats, I'll take 3 chairs and I'll put 3 chairs at the front of the room and I'll say, okay, John, you're in 3 seats, go sit in all 3 chairs at the same time, right? And you very quickly see the absurdity of it as John tries to like lie sideways across 3 chairs because you're like, oh, this isn't possible. I can't sit in 3 seats. And so bringing in fractional people, part-time people, contractors, there's all sorts of ways to slice up this egg so that you get the expertise you need on the time frame that you need it, even when you're a smaller organization.
That makes sense. Um, on the on that side, do you see people using fractional operations help very often? Is that pretty
One
common
of the
here?
most controversial topics in all of EOS, not that we have that many topics that are controversial, but one of them is, can you have a fractional integrator? The
Yeah.
integrator is the critical central person for organizational accountability and discipline on your leadership team, right?
Mhm.
So it goes visionary, that's your entrepreneur, they're at the top. Number two, integrator, usually going to call that vice president of operations, COO, whatever, what have you. But it's the person who makes sure that the thing runs. In my personal opinion and in my experience, that person cannot be a fractional insert.
Mm.
That person must be a you person, because when they are fractional, people do not respect them the way they need to be respected, right? Because, oh, you're just a contractor, you're not one of us, right? And generally, they're not invested enough in the business because they're trying to run 5 businesses. Okay. So you can have a great CFO who is the CFO for 10 accounts. In fact, I would encourage you to have a CFO who's a CFO for 10 accounts, because that's going to bring such incredibly valuable perspective, right, from other businesses and from other things versus having just your one person. But that operations leader, that integrator, I am very much of the school. That's got to be your person. That has got
Mhm.
to be your full-time employee person who is running your business for you.
I would I haven't seen it, where somebody operates in a fractional integrator. I've heard of that. I've known some people who've done it, but um, having an integrator, having an integrator who is in the business, yeah, I would be hard pressed to think how it could work very well, because I talk to my integrator, all the time, and
Yeah,
we are, having regular conversations and she's thinking about process improvement all the time, and she's
yeah.
thinking about keeping us on track with all of our tools and everything. So, yeah, I would be curious about that. But I've always kind of thought, like, I see operations as being something that people outsource, and I think it can be done. I'm never going to say that something can't be done, but
Mhm.
yeah, that's been a piece that I've kind of wondered if how that works. And maybe for like the size of the organization, it matters for sure. But
What I'll say is, when people hire fractional integrators, what I've seen is a couple of things. One is they charge an enormous amount. I mean, I've seen people charge $5, $10, $20,000 a month for part-time integrator service. But more importantly, they mostly just become paper pushers. They run the level 10 and they like say, did you do your thing or did you not do your thing? They write down the goals. They just become sort of highly paid administrative assistants for the most part. I've never met one who actually was willing and able to hold people inside the organization accountable from a fractional seat. I just haven't seen it.
mm. So what does that look like that's different than like the integrator role? Like, because integrator and implementer, because they both start with I's and end with
Oh, sorry.
sound.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
you know,
yeah.
let's clarify, because I know that sometimes gets confused in people's heads.
Yeah, absolutely. So, integrator, full-time employee, the person who runs the business. They are the day-to-day operationally minded person who makes sure the trains run on time, who makes sure people are where they need to be, the bills go out the way they need to. They're the ones who love managing people. They love being in the weeds. They love building processes. They love doing the thing that the business does.
Mhm.
Implementer is what I do. We are the drop-in coaches who help install EOS inside of a business. So
Mhm.
I'm never going to write a policy or a procedure for you. I'm never going to sit down with one of your employees and tell them they're not doing a good enough job. That's not my thing. That's your integrator's thing. And yes, they do both start with I, which is very annoying, because I've had people say, "Oh, well, how do we hire an implementer?" And I'm like, "I'm your implementer. What do you mean, how do you hire an implementer? That's me." It's like, "No, no, integrator." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Yeah, implementers. So you're helping that with the actual like tools to make sure that they have their tools in place and that they are, they have a scorecard that's got the right things on there, that they're able to, that they're, getting helping them set up like the structure of the meetings and things like that, making sure that all that's
Yeah.
happening.
If you like sports, I often refer to it as the coach and the quarterback. I'm the coach on the sidelines. I'm yelling. I'm calling plays. I'm saying, hey, build some metrics, right? The quarterback is the integrator. That's the person who's out there on the field, running the team, running the play, making it happen.
Yeah, that's a good analogy for any of us who might have ever watched football. Okay, I appreciate all of this. And then I'm thinking, we're probably going to do a couple extra episodes on EOS and how that can work. Because, I'm learning myself, and I think that it's really good for service-based businesses to understand this as an option to how to run their business. So you don't have to recreate the wheel. Like we don't need to do that. So I would love to, encourage people, if you have questions, make sure you comment on, or you can always like email us, but then also if you're watching on YouTube, you can comment below and we'll get some questions answered for you. I hear Zac likes questions and he likes to hear feedback. So definitely, post those into the YouTube comments if you're watching on YouTube. Well, Zac, before we go, I would want to point people to how they can find you. So you can go to the EOS website, which is eosworldwide.com, and it'll be /Zac, ZAC-Cramer, CRAMER. We will put this in the show notes too and put it in the YouTube description so anybody can find you. But I didn't tell you this before we started, but I like to ask people a question at the end about business books that maybe can be related to EOS or not, but I would like to know, what is your favorite business book of all time?
I hate business books. I think that most business books are a blog post that somebody wanted to get paid for. And so then they padded it out 175 additional pages.
I love it.
When people ask me this question, which is not an uncommon question, what I always tell them is go read fiction, right? Because what fiction is going to tell you, go read Game of Thrones, go read, Where Does the Cage Bird Sing? Go read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I don't care. Because business is about people. People are emotional creatures. And what matters is not whether or not you've memorized the 17 formulas for success in marketing. What matters is whether or not we can connect to people, whether or not we can empathize with them, whether or not we understand the human experience of our customers and our employees. And we don't learn that from a business book. We learn that from reading about other people, other cultures, other things. So whenever somebody asks for a business book recommendation, I tell them, burn every business book you've ever heard of, burn every business book you've ever thought about. Go get the best piece of fiction that you can find. It's going to teach you more about people, which is what you need to know to run a successful business than any business book ever will.
I love it. Well, what's your favorite fiction book then?
That is an impossible question to answer. I would not be spurred. I can't. I couldn't. I have been a bookworm for a long, long time. I'm sorry. I got to pass on that one. There are too many great books in this universe to pick one of them.
Yeah.
I will say the best book I've read recently was one called Chain Gang All Stars, which is an extraordinary book about a dystopian future where prisoners are arranged into gangs that fight it out basically on the equivalent of ESPN. But the plot isn't the point. The people is the point. The personalities are the point. The emotional experience those characters go through is the point. So if you're just looking for an extraordinary book that'll show you a lot about human emotion and behavior and people, Chain Gang All Stars just blew my mind.
I love it. Well, Zac, thank you so much for being here. And also, if anybody is watching on YouTube, please, can you do a little fashion show for us between your glittery EOS shirt and then the custom sequins? I love it.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing that's worth doing unless it's worth doing fabulous. That's just a core concept of mine.
I'm here for it. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Hannah. This was super fun.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.